Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Among my most popular of my recent postings is my favorite one-liners that I think are the most likely to be useful. So I presented them unvarnished there, but in this podcast, I'd like to briefly explain the one-liner. I think it might be more helpful to you. First, some regarding career. The one-liner is, do what you love and poverty usually follows. The problem is that too many people love the same things. The arts, the entertainment, environment, sports, fashion. So the competition is fierce. So usually people are grateful to get volunteer gigs. And so I often say, do what you love, but do it as a hobby. As Bill Gates wisely said, make your money with software. That's where money was to be made in his case. But then his personal interest, that is philanthropy, he does that on the side. I invite you to do the same. I've known some amazingly talented singers. I'm an accompanist. I play the piano. Who have day jobs, crappy office jobs. And they're award-winning, fabulous singers and dancers and actors and performers, all wrapped in triple threats. Okay. My next one-liner is, merit is all. I understand the merits of trying to compensate for inequality, the legacy of slavery, the Japanese internment camps, the Chinese building the railroads enslaved, the Jews from the Holocaust, the Vietnamese who we had tortured in Vietnam. But the advantages of that reverse discrimination are outweighed by the decline in merit in the quality of our services, our products, everything, and everybody is viewed who is not a white male who gets hired as tainted. We're seeing, for example, that I think it was Oregon is the 7th state to not require the bar exam anymore for lawyers because they want more black lawyers. Isn't that really going to encourage our racism, our presumption that a person who got into Harvard or became a doctor or a lawyer got there because the DEI thumb was on the scales? Next one-liner, venerate intelligence. It's a dirty word these days. Even though intelligence scores in their proxies, that is the SAT, GRE, overpredict for blacks. And yet, it's somehow seen as racist. They'll invoke some old IQ test from 1930 asking about sailing, which blacks have little access to. The truth is, it is the most valid predictor of college success and not bad at life success. And you get rid of intelligence tests, you're going to make worse decisions and probably more racist decisions because we're limited to subjectivity. Intelligence, as you know, is core to everything we do. Anytime we hire for any kind of an important job, we want somebody who learns quickly, who can infer and not just follow the rules, letter of the law, but think, who can analyze. That's intelligence. We must venerate, not denigrate intelligence. Next one-liner, most hard workers are heroic, not workaholic. Most people who work hard are not doing it for the extra money. They do it because they feel it's core to the right way to live life. And there are certain activists, for example, those who advocate for the 30-hour work week or more work-life balance, who ensure guilt trip. I like to use the example of the quality cardiologist. Imagine he or she was forced to limit it to 30 hours a week. Thereby, patients would either have to wait longer to see a cardiologist or see a worse one. Some cardiologist who couldn't even fill 30 hours a week suddenly now gets those hours. Hard workers should be honored, even if they don't clean up the diapers so much. Next. To call them workaholics, akin to addicted alcoholics. It's true of a tiny percentage of people, but for most, it's a cosmically wise, almost spiritually guided decision. Next one-liner. Worthy criticism is a gift. Unless, perhaps especially here in California, we're not supposed to criticize. We're supposed to be non-judgmental. We're supposed to be all-accepting. And yet discernment, which I'm not a Christian, but that concept of Christian discernment, judgmentalness, is good. And if you are given the gift of criticism that is well-derived, not evil, not mean, instead of getting defensive, which is what most people do, it would be very wise to be grateful for the gift of worthy criticism. Next, managers are marionetted. You read the media, watch the media, and you think that managers are inferior to the workers. Even though by definition, of course there's some managers who get promoted outside of merit, but most are picked because they're better. Better, yes, that word better. And yet they are constrained. They're constrained by HR rules. They're constrained by union rules. They're constrained by their bosses. They're constrained by workers they can't get rid of. They're constrained by too much pressure for the bottom line. Managers are marionetted, and instead of us treating them as inferior the way the media does, we should honor the manager, the marionetted manager. Next one-liner. Status is the enemy of contentment. I really laugh as I see on the side of the road, I see owners of BMWs and Mercedeses and the like that break down far more often than do Toyotas. Why do they have those cars, even though they cost twice as much and they break down more? This weird thing called status. Every time I see somebody with a Rolex watch, they think it makes them better perceived. No. Intelligent people, at least the people who they should care to impress, think less of them that they would spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a watch that tells no better time than a $20 Casio. Homes. How absurd. A home in a fancy neighborhood costs $2-3 million on the coasts. And yet the actual increase in safety or quality of life or the outcomes of students in the schools are trivial compared to the millions of dollars of difference in cost between a big house in a Tony neighborhood and modest digs in a modest neighborhood. I have a million other examples at school, anyway, including higher ed, but anyway, status is the enemy of contentment. A job interview is two people lying to each other. It's a bit overstated. Some people strive to be honest, but employers do tend to put the best face on what the job is really like and hide how hard it really is or how annoying certain coworkers are, etc., or ethical dilemmas or ethical liabilities of that particular nonprofit or for-profit. And the job seeker, let me tell you, as a career counselor, I know the lengths, especially weak candidates, will go to obfuscate their bad record. So whether it be in the interview or in their application process, job interview too often is two people lying to each other. Next one-liner, the more prestigious the college, the worse the teaching. I know that seems absurd to you, but as somebody with a PhD from Berkeley specializing in the evaluation of education and innovation, it is true. Because the more prestigious the university, the more likely that to hire and promote faculty based on how much research, which is usually cutting-edge, arcane, narrow research, because it brings in the bucks, then how well they can teach the basics of what students need to know. Critical thinking, writing, mathematical reasoning, scientific reasoning. Not only are they not rewarded for it, by temperament, these are people who are better at doing research. Many can't even speak good English. And yet, for the fortunes that students pay for higher ed, we subject students to that? At community college, the least prestigious, on average, the teaching is the best, because faculty is hired almost exclusively based on how well they can teach. The basics, what students need to know. I like to talk about third-tier law schools. Most of the teachers in third-tier law schools are master practitioners. That's who I'd want teaching me, not some theoretical professor of constitutional law. I love the story. The former dean of Yale Law School was called in the middle of the night, asked from a friend who had been jailed, I guess for a DUI or whatever, and asked, hey, you gotta get me out of here, gotta get me out of jail, gotta bail me out. And the dean was forced to admit he had no idea how to do it. Is that really why should we be venerating Yale Law School, Harvard Law School? They are excellent at theory and creating professors and activists. They're not so good at creating lawyers. And then that's why top law firms, after the law students graduated from their prestigious colleges, they have long training programs to teach them how to be a lawyer. So if you're going to a third-tier medical school or law school or business school or whatever, you may get a better education. And then you need to make the case in your job application that despite your lack of designer label on your diploma, that you're actually going to be a better practitioner. Next one-liner, forego state you for you. The costs of colleges have dramatically increased, including the public's. They do some Robin Hooding. They charge incredible sticker prices, like $42,000 a year all in at University of California public. But they give free rides to people they want. And for that often bad education, whereas what I call U-University, some personalized combination of self-study, tutoring, reading, watching videos, attending conferences, that you choose what to learn, how to learn it, and at what pace, and it's normally next to nothing in cost. It's often far wiser than any university program, but it then is on you to convince the employer that you know a lot and that you were bold in making the decision to forego state you in favor of you. Next one-liner, self-employment is hard. I used to more often recommend self-employment, but the governing rules have metastasized, and the competition, including for online businesses, has become wild. So unless you're really a self-starter, have a brilliant idea or can copy or enhance somebody else's great idea, and really good at on-the-fly problem solving, you should think twice about self-employment. We all like the idea of being our own boss and controlling your life, but true, you can work only 12 hours a day. So you only work, well, I got that wrong. But bottom line, you work long hours, and you have to provide your own benefits. Final one-liner about careers is negativity spawns bold solutions. We tend to venerate the chirpy, happy person. I attended a show recently where the woman proudly says, oh, when I start to worry, I just sing a happy song. Idiot. The prerequisite to bold solutions is normally negativity. Thinking about the problem, catastrophizing if necessary. What's worst case? What's moderate case? What would be a bold, intelligent solution? If you say everything is fine, oh, everything is good, the world is great, America's the greatest country. Idiot. That doesn't improve things in general. Okay, moving on to relationships. For richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health till death do us part. That is a stretch, ever more now than ever. As people live longer, as women are hating men more, and men are more and more suspicious of women, and women have more economic power so they can say screw you to a guy if they don't like him. It feels like a real stretch to proclaim before parents, friends, and God if you're a believer, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and health till death do us part. Next one-liner. Solohood is underrated. I've had 6,000 clients, I have many friends. If I look at the pool of the people who are by themselves, who are solo largely, they socialize, but who live by themselves and are largely solo, against the coupled, the pool of the solo is generally happier. And logically, that makes sense. They don't have to compromise so much about everything. From what to do, to how to spend, to what temperature to keep the bed. And yet we somehow say, Homo sapiens is a social animal. We're meant to be in a community. Solohood is underrated. Family is overrated. That's the next one-liner. We are thrust into family at random as opposed to our friends that we choose. We may like some family, we may hate some family. And sure, we share history, but that doesn't be enough to very often justify the huge toll that family takes on us. The amount of stress I've heard among my clients and friends from a given family member driving everybody nuts is huge. So I urge you to cut out of your life family members who are ruining your life or making it miserable, or where you'd be, and honor your good friends. Final one on relationships. Many people prefer dogs to people. It's true. When I walk my dog down the street, and I see the passerby, I stop and pet my sweet dog, I kind of half-jokingly ask, so do you like people better or animals better? Most of them say dogs. Now, of course, that's a select population. But I've read, and I'm not here with citations, but that many people prefer dogs to people. So that's a sobering note. So now some one-liners on personal stuff, mainly personal growth. This I learned from my father and has helped my clients more than anything else. Stop looking back. Take the next step forward. We've all had shit happen to us. My father had the Holocaust happen to him. But when I asked him why he rarely talked about it, he said, Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from my life. I won't give them 1 minute more. Stop looking back. Always take the next step forward. Great stuff. Especially in this Bay Area where everybody's victimizing. What their parents did to them, spouses them, capitalism did to them, racism. That is ultimately disempowering. Next one-liner. Better good than nice. It's easy to be nice. Be polite, open doors. How are you? Oh, you look so nice today. Doing little small things. But that's far less valuable than being good. The good person will sometimes say things that make somebody feel uncomfortable. But ultimately, it's in that other person's best interest or society's. Better to be good than nice. Next one-liner. Nearly all is part genes, part environment. The Bay Area ethos is, we're all infinitely malleable. Work hard enough, you can be anything you want. Dream it and you can do it. Bullshit. We are limited. I will never be able to draw more than stick figures. I am terrible at fixing things. When it goes beyond tracing the toilet paper roll, I am wise to call the person I have a lifetime of experience to let me know that that's true. But you can't play the piano like I do. Almost nobody can. I was born with that. I grew up in a tenement in the Bronx and we refused to take lessons and just played by ear by playing along with the record player and learned trial and error. And I became a professional at age 12. That's just who I am. Acknowledge you. I played basketball my whole life. I can't dunk. My moves suck. Got a good outside shot, but I have strengths, I have weaknesses. What are your strengths and immutable rather than remediable weaknesses? Structure your life to play to your strengths and skirt rather than remediate all but crucial weaknesses. Next one-liner. Aim to tweak, not remake yourself. Because we are foundationally a certain way, I can never be foundationally laid back or stupid. So, and I'm horrible in a team. I'm a know-it-all. I'm dominating. So I know that I want to accept those things and just tweak certain aspects of myself. So I work hard to be a better listener. I can do that. I am a little more restrained in disagreeing. I have a tendency to be overweight. I'm not now. But in a restaurant, I make a practice now of having 1 or 2 pieces of bread instead of 4. Small shit. I order my favorite lower calorie entree, not the lowest calorie, but not fettuccine Alfredo. I tweak, not remake myself. Next one-liner. Self-esteem encourages complacency. Again, in the Bay Area, probably nationally these days, we venerate the importance of self-esteem. But studies have shown, and I'm not here with citations, but studies have unambiguously shown that the highest achievers have the lowest self-esteem. And that makes sense. Because if you think you're hot shit, you're going to be more likely to be complacent. You can't be paralyzingly low in self-esteem. But beyond that baseline, you must ever be worrying, am I good enough? How can I improve? That relatively low self-esteem is fuel for your getting better. Next one, be judgmental. It is central. A civilized society is better when it is discerning. Some music is better than others. Some cultures are better. I venerate the Japanese culture. I love their intelligence. Of course, there are individual differences, but as a culture, intelligence, hard work, techno-savvy, beautiful aesthetic, restraint rather than impulsivity. I call Japanese culture better than many others. I am judgmental. It affects who I befriend. It affects what I buy. It affects everything. Be judgmental. Oh, we shouldn't be judgmental. We should be all accepting. Bullshit. That's a formula for societal dissolution to a low common denominator. Next, some people are lazy. Again, in our excuse-making society, we say, oh no, you're not lazy. You just have fear of failure. Or it's what your parents did to you. You're living that legacy of whatever. Bullshit. Some people are lazy. They are kickback people. They're hard to motivate themselves. If it's you, perhaps you need to accept that. You're not going to become driven like me. I'm a crazy guy. Good crazy, but crazy. I work 70 hours a week. I'm 74 years old, and I hope to work this much until I'm dead, hopefully a long time from now. Accept your strengths, accept your weaknesses, including laziness. And if your partner is lazy and it's driving you crazy, your chances of turning that lazy slug into a hard worker is near zero. The loud and proud deserve to be quieter. We live in an era where people crow, especially if they believe in today's woke DEI orthodoxy. They are loud and proud and they don't want to be interrupted. They deserve to be quieter. That's my one-liner. The loud and proud often are longer on confidence than competence. The loud and proud deserve to be quieter. And finally, dollar cost average into a low-cost index fund. Then let compounding do its magic. Let me unpack that. Financial advisors make investing more complicated than necessary. There's no guarantees, but low-cost index funds are cheap to buy and get you diversity and often tax advantage. And timing the market is usually a fool's game because psychology is such that we tend to buy when prices are high and sell when they're low. Instead, the next day you have some chunk of money, $100, $500, whatever it is. Put it the next day into a low-cost index fund. And that day, then you're letting compounding do its magic. Compounding is a miracle. You put in $100 a week now at age 25, it's worth, I think, $174,000. I think it's more. I think it's $352,000 when you're 55. I myself, personal opinion, I believe America is in its decline and fall. And so I have whatever new money I have to invest. I put it in a market basket of the top Indian companies, stock symbol FLIN, F-I-L-I-N, which is a very low cost ratio. Okay, on policy. I believe K-12 education is our most overrated product. We place so much hope in education, part of that infinite malleability thing. But study after study, starting way back with the Coleman Report, finds that which school doesn't matter much at all. What matters most is genes and, interestingly, peers more than parents. Don't fight so much to get your kid in the right school or vote for yet another bond issue. America spends near the top per capita in the world on education, and we achieve number 18 below Poland. Education is not a magic pill. To the extent that education matters, especially in today's environment where they mush together kids of all abilities because politics are trumping pedagogy, a tutor can be helpful. A mentor can be helpful. But these massive classes, imagine you were trying to learn Mandarin and you had a choice between two classes. You were a beginner. You could have one where they're your fellow beginners. So each hour, all the hour was spent on beginners. Or you could have been in a class that had some native speakers of Mandarin, some intermediates, and beginners. Only a small percentage of the time in that other class would be spent on what you need. Of course you would choose the class for beginners. And yet in today's crazy politics trumping pedagogy mindset, in today's mammoth education bureaucracy, we forego the obvious wisdom of that and mush everybody together, from newcomers to America, speak no English, to native speakers, gifted, disabled, violent, not violent, all in the same class. It's a Herculean challenge for almost any teacher. It certainly does not serve us. I imagine China's laughing at us. Next one-liner, and that's true of higher education as well. All but the top few colleges are virtually open admission. Only half-jokingly, we say they're 98.6 schools. All you need to get in is normal body temperature. And so the professors, who are ill-equipped as a group to teach undergraduates, are having to teach kids who are barely literate with some very smart kids. A very tough challenge. Next one-liner. Government should be smaller, much smaller. We see again and again its inefficiency. I mean, even we have spent a fortune on security. And if there was anything that should be secure, it's the Secret Service protecting the president at his rally just a couple of months before the election. And yet they were in complete disarray. And even the plain old citizens warned again and again to the Secret Service, watch, there's a guy up there on the roof. And they ignored it for at least 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Is that incompetence? Is it deliberate? I'm no conspiracy guy. But certainly, government does everything badly and expensively. Government should be much smaller. I remember the time when the earthquake, the Bay Bridge collapsed, the main artery from the East Bay into San Francisco. And government said it would take months to repair. Well, some bold entrepreneurial contractor said, I'll do it in 3 days. And they did. I'm reading a book now by Kazuo, I can't pronounce his last name. And he talks even in Japan. Oh, the government rebuilding after Hiroshima. So slow. So slow. I was driving past a fence in San Francisco, and the workers were knocking it down. The fence looked perfectly new. I stopped and I asked, why? He said, well, the union says we don't have enough work. So we just, when we finish, we tear it down and start again. Your government at work, not government, our tax dollars at work, crazy. Government should be smaller, much smaller. And lest I be seen as a right-wing guy, I believe that particularly applies to defense. Next one-liner. Even wise ideas that dare veer right of center are subject to the 3 C's: censure, censor, and cancel. I have been fortunate to have had quite a wonderful platform through most of my career. And I held many liberal views. But dared I say something that was dared veer right of center? I won't be going to specific, but I swear on my parents' life, I was let go for non-merit, woke DEI, 3 C's, censure, censor, and cancel. That is not a formula for a good society. A good society recognizes that wisdom resides across the ideological spectrum. When we have this absurd self-righteousness that only our narrow view is acceptable, it's reminiscent of Nazi Germany and, quote, Soviet realism under Stalin. It is a formula for societal dissolution. I'm very worried about the 3 C's. Next one-liner. Ideological diversity should trump melanin diversity. This is a corollary of the previous. As I said, I held many liberal views. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-gay marriage. I'm not materialistic. I don't believe in no government. I'm not some libertarian. But not all wisdom resides left of center. I do believe that merit, which is anathema to the left these days, is the most important characteristic in selecting people and awarding government contracts. Ideological diversity deserves voice, not censorship. Next one-liner. Global warming views are too fevered. If one looks dispassionately at the cost-benefit probabilities of each of the interventions that are being foisted upon us, for example, reducing the number of lanes despite the increase in population, causing blood pressure raising crazy upsetness and wasting of people's busy time sitting in traffic spewing pollutants, while most of the developing world, including China, is building coal-fired plants fast and furious. Is this really going to control the climate, or is it not simple virtue signaling, wasting of taxpayer dollars? I see now so many lanes converted to bike lanes that had long been sitting empty, and or shrubs of clumps of shrubs with a bench. Idiotic. Our global warming policies should be based on a measured consideration of the risks, rewards, benefits, liabilities, cost to the taxpayer, rather than being fervid. Men deserve better treatment. Watch today. If a Martian came down to Earth, they would think men are clearly the inferior species, because most TV shows, movies, commercials, books portray men as boors, sleazes, oafs, and women are always showing them the way or acting independent with their chin raised, what I call the Obama chin. They taught Obama, raise your chin slightly so that you seem more confident. They would think that men are inferior. And yet most of the major discoveries that have improved our life, from the iPhone to antibiotics, to internet, to this webcam that I'm talking to, were invented by men. Even the disposable tampon, the birth control pills, were developed by men. Most of the dangerous work is done by men, from sewer workers to roofers, pest control workers, ice fishermen. But you watch the media and all you think is there are guys sitting, getting high, being assholes. Men deserve better treatment. They deserve to be treated on the merits. And of course, worst is that when women have a deficit, for example, there's a quote, underrepresentation of women in STEM, there's been billions of dollars of redress, science, technology, engineering, and math. But when men have the deficit, the ultimate deficit, they live 6 years shorter. And their last decade in worse health, 95% of the gender-specific research for the last 60 years has been on women. And outreach. When was the last time you saw a run for early heart attack, which kills many, many men earlier? You see a run for breast cancer. Men deserve treatment on the merits. And finally, a few on one-liners on the word meaning. Few things are actually awesome, but we're so easy. Oh, you look awesome! That was an awesome movie! It's part of the grade inflation that pervades modern shallow society. We should reserve awesome for the truly awesome. Like I had a friend who had a bad back and in earlier days would have needed open back surgery, which was very risky, painful, and long recovery. Instead, he went in at 11 a.m., was out at 1 p.m. All they did was do a micro-incision and lasered out the bad parts. The hero, what should be awesome, is the developer of that technology. Not our politicians, not our actors, not our musicians who dare to claim to know more about policy than experts. They're idiots who can sing, who are behemoths, who bulked up and can take steroids and be athletes. It's the scientists who work in quiet anonymity to develop those things that save our lives or enhance our lives. Those are awesome. Next one-liner. Give not to the least among us, but to those with greater potential to contribute. Our hearts reach out to, in those commercials, they see the poor kids starving in Africa, the dogs that are in the cages, and we feel like we've got to give to them. And yet, if we really care about making a difference, not just virtue signaling or following our heart. We would give, for example, to mentorship programs for low-income gifted kids. Kids whose potential, which is great, would otherwise go unrealized. We would not necessarily succumb to this least among us, which comes from the New Testament. Every battlefield medic knows. You've got limited resources in the battlefield. You don't necessarily give them to the sickest. You give them to those with the most potential to get better. If I owned a solar farm and I had 5 collectors and I now had the money to build a 6th, only an idiot would put the 6th near the location where the lowest performing solar collector operated. We would obviously put it near the solar collector that created the most. And yet in our policies, we give to those that have heretofore produced the least. Part of humankind's absolute idiocracy. In any event, those are my thoughts, my expansions on my most liked one-liners. As usual, I thank you for watching. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. And certainly would welcome you taking a look at any of my 34 books. Probably the 2 most relevant to this are How to Do Life and A Dose of Reality. But all 34 are on Amazon. Just go there, search on my name, Marty Nemko, Nemko, and you will find more than you can stomach. I like to end all these podcasts with my favorite quote, not from me, but from Frank A. Clark. It's more relevant today than ever in today's groupthink. We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't.